What's up, guys? It's Jasmine here for JDS Sports. We are here at the Slam office in New York for another episode of Inside Moves. I'm so excited for our guest today. We have Sally Nnamani, Global Leader and Chief Partnership Officer of PeacePlayers International. All right, Sally, thank you for coming on Inside Moves. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. You are someone who I've wanted to speak to for a long time. Even in doing my, I know a few things about you, obviously, through working with you for PeacePlayers, but just doing my research and learning about what you do outside of that and everything that you're, really doing to push youth in sports and, global impact forward has been really rewarding. And I'm so excited to talk to you because I tell you this all the time, Sally for president is real for me. And it's even more real now that I've done, a little research. Nice.
I'm honored. Listen, I'm trying to take a sport that's meant so much to me growing up and using it as a springboard to do more, be it from an impact standpoint or from a global development standpoint. I think sport is it's a language, it's a platform, and we just continue to uncover different ways to use it to do more. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do.
We love it. Sally for president. Y'all write that down. Okay, so let's start talking about, PeacePlayers, the Girls Summit, and youth sports. You've done a lot of things for PeacePlayers in this space, whether that's internationally or U.S. What has drawn you to the idea of using sports, specifically basketball, as a tool of peace building?
So it's so interesting, right? How life just kind of interweaves and interconnects in different ways. I'm Nigerian. I said this at the start of our conversation, right? So born back home, we moved here. My siblings and my mom and I, we all moved here when I was in middle school. And Nigeria, if you have any context on the history of the country, we had a civil war in the late 60s into the 70s, where, for 3 years, war pretty much ravaged the country. My parents were kids during the war. And so I grew up in a post-conflict country that was led by a military regime. And so, when you're a kid, you're not really thinking about these things. You're just hanging out, doing your thing, being a child, right? Mm-hmm. And so my brother and I, we learned about basketball in the 90s. Michael Jordan was
a great era to learn the game.
Yeah, Michael Jordan. We used to, when we first got cable TV, we had like Sky Sports and ESPN, and we would see highlights of the Bulls, and we're like, oh my God, this is like incredible. So I became a fan of the game from when I was very young, before I even had a chance to ever play sports. And so again, for me, like, sport was just like a recreational activity. Like, I didn't think any more beyond it. Like, soccer was still our first sport, but basketball was something we thought was so cool. Yeah. And then when we moved to the US, my brother and I picked up basketball again, and it just really became like a way of life, like a connector, because again, we grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, and basketball really became a way to make friends and really begin to understand this new community, new place that we were in. So, and I didn't realize it then, but like this is how your life just kind of like, you have these experiences that ladder up, and then later on you realize like, this is what this was bringing me to. Yeah. And so I've always looked at basketball as something that I did is like for fun. It's a passion. I enjoy it. And I've always kept it separately from my academic interests, right? So I knew that in college I was going to go, my goal was to become a lawyer. And so I decided not to go to law school and decided to go get my master's in international relations and pursue a career like in diplomacy. Okay. And so I had a really cool opportunity to work at the International Chamber of Commerce. Wow. And my boss was the the permanent representative of the International Chamber of Commerce at the United Nations. And so during that time, I spent a lot of time at the UN and happened to stumble in a session where the topic was using sport for development and peace building. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I've always thought about basketball and sports as like just an activity that I did. Like, when I wrapped up school, I go to the playground and play. Like, I was a basketball head growing up. It was such a huge part of my life. I had an Allen Iverson jersey. Iverson was my favorite player growing up, and I wore it every week. Like, it was, like, I didn't even care. It was part of the outfit. Every week I wore my Iverson jersey.
That's definitely worth it.
So when I learned about this kind of interesting, like, niche, opportunity to bridge sport and, development and social outcomes in countries that are kind of finding their footing, and what role can sport play in like social cohesion and things like that. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let me explore this. And see what opportunities can be here. And I was in grad school at the time. And so that was when I learned about PeacePlayers and happened to meet a lot of people who have either worked with the organization. We have a fellowship program in South Africa, in Northern Ireland, in Israel, and also in Cyprus. So I took the opportunity to go abroad, and I lived in Northern Ireland for 2 years, and leading peace building through sports programs in a country that has experienced deep religious and sectarian divides between kind of the Catholic, Irish, Protestant, British communities. So I did that for 2 years, and when I was moving back home to the U.S., that was when we expanded into the U.S. So that's how, like, if you kind of take a step back to my life story, like, you know, having grown up in a post-conflict country, and we had lost family to the war, like, I've always been fascinated with, like, what gets people to a point of, like, wanting to completely annihilate another group, and what can be done to address that. And sport just kind of have been a really interesting way to do that. And I really loved being able to really take something that's so dear to me, which is basketball, and be able to put it towards another space that I'm just as curious and passionate about.
No, that's awesome. I love that. No, I didn't know your full story of how you came over to America, but it's beautiful to hear that you found something that you were passionate about and you were able to apply that to create real change. And so, definitely proud to be someone who's able to work with you. And I want to say, what was it like to kind of understand what PeacePlayer was doing from an international standpoint and seeing how that could be applied to the U.S.?
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. So we launched in the U.S. in 2016, like late 2016 going into 2017. And that expansion really came to fruition through seed investment from Nike. And if you remember what 2016 was, it's the elections, just deepening polarization in the U.S. And Nike and a number of other groups were thinking, like, well, what role can sport play in addressing these deepening divides, deepening inequities in the U.S.? And so they approached us, kind of given the work that we've done in very challenging places. I mean, we're talking Israel and the West Bank, South Africa, 6 years following the end of apartheid. That was when PeacePlayers really established programs there. So we worked in some really challenging places and have found quite some success. And so Nike was curious and like, well, what can we take from the model, that the program model that we built in these places, and what could that look like in the U.S.? And so we launched in 5 cities, Brooklyn, New York, Chicago, Detroit, LA, and Baltimore. Big cities, but each of these cities all have like neighborhoods and pockets that are not always part of the prosperity and success and opportunity that these cities have to offer. And so our focus in the U.S. really became about, well, what role can sport play in kind of providing those pathways for young people who might not even have access to like a quality sports program, quality sports experience, quality leadership training, global engagement opportunities. What role could PeacePlayers play in providing that platform to those young people? And so that was that became what we built the program in the U.S. around, is really around equitable access, youth leadership and youth voice, and global engagement. Young people having an opportunity to have a voice and have an opinion about issues that are affecting the world globally, and also ultimately in their local communities as well.
For sure. No, that's so interesting to hear that even in a time of 2016, brands like a Nike were like trying to invest in something like PeacePlayers to really change that tune of how sports can connect so many people. And I know just even through my experience with us at JDS Sports and our Play with Purpose Fund and being able to contribute to the U.S. side of PeacePlayers has been really cool to see. And so even this year, you allowed me to be part of the Girls Summit in LA, which was y'all's second summit. So what was that kind of like so far, just creating, what you all set out to do, actually seeing those goals come to life with something like the Girls Summit?
So the Girls Summit, I mean, that initiative is so important and so critical. When we launched in the U.S., this is again 2016, 2017, girls sports and women's sports, it certainly wasn't as sexy as it is now. Right. And we found that, we would host, programming and clinics, and we just didn't have any female participation. And for me, that was a problem. Like, I was lucky growing up. I had an older brother who played, and that was what kind of kept me in the game until he went off to college. By then, I felt confident enough to hold my own, right? But we found that a lot of girls were curious about sports, but just did not feel welcome or safe at a playground, or just didn't have the confidence to work. Like, I always say this. Like, actually, one of my colleagues always says this. Title IX legislated, the gym and the schools. It did not legislate the playgrounds. So for a young person, a young girl, like the first kind of like exposure to sports is the park, it's the playground. Exactly. I mean, you walk in there and it's like it's all boys, and like you haven't really found your you haven't had an opportunity to play. Like, you're probably going to be discouraged from playing, right? So we wanted to be intentional about building a program that was really dedicated to getting more girls involved. And we started it in Brooklyn, and got the model right, and then took the learnings and shared it with colleagues in LA and other parts of the US. And then from there, we're like, you know what? Wouldn't it be so awesome to like build an initiative that connects young women who are part of these girls-focused programs in their cities? And really begin to build this like national network of young grassroots athletes who also share a passion around using the sport to make a difference in their communities. We see right now there's a lot of spotlight on like the high school elite athletes. What about like the young women who love sports and also have an opinion and a voice around issues? How can we combine those two factors? And that's what the Girls Summit became. It's essentially a platform that looks to use sports as a framework to explore what it means to lead, to explore leadership principles, to explore advocacy, and exposing young women especially, to the mentors and the experiences to help cultivate that. And even after that experience, they go back to their cities, and they're still part of local programming that's really, really invested in like leadership, and not just leadership from like, you're learning how to lead, but really practical opportunities for young girls to put that to practice with a supportive network and mentors and friends. And you find like, I'm not sure what your experience was. Like me growing up, like we didn't always have a lot of affirmative environments around sports. Agreed, it was like compete, and we want to compete, but like sometimes you just need somebody to tell you like you're good. Like you might be hard on yourself right now, like you're good, and really build you up. And that's what the Girls Summit is really about. More than the event, it's really a year-round effort that's dedicated to like sport, that the basketball court as the arena to develop future leaders.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's so amazing. I know last year, because the summit was in New York, I was able to come to the Nike headquarters and see one of the clinics. But this past year in LA, this was my first time seeing every aspect of it. And you guys really do, not just touch the court. Like there's so many other parts where you had the girls like doing media days. You had them doing, having conversations with women who are already in their previous positions of wanting to grow up and play, but also showing where they are now. Like I remember I sat in the finance seminar and I was writing stuff down. I was like, oh wow, I didn't know this. Like I need to write this down as an adult and actually do it. I think that's amazing that you guys do things not only on the court but also off the court, because that really does push those young girls to where they need to be and where they want to be, and it even offers them ideas of places that they didn't even think they could be. And so that was a really cool experience. So I thank you for letting me be a part of that.
Just to also add to that, like I like to think of the girls basketball, women's basketball space as an ecosystem. Right, like we're both part of Hoop York and Buckets, and I want my girls to see that like what that long-term journey can look like. Right, like you might go on to play pro, you might go on to go to university, whatever that looks like for you. Like it is like we want sports to feel like a supportive space that girls can find their voice, feel comfortable using that voice. And so when you talk about being part of the Girls Summit, like I want Hoop York and those other platforms to be part of it, because it's part of the experience. And the girls seeing you all and seeing how amazing you are, and like that knowing that you were once in their shoes, like that for them I think provides like, here's a role model, or here's what my end goal could be. And these women are just as successful, and they're brilliant, and it's part of the whole thing. So I think of it as a whole ecosystem. Like we've got the Girls Summit, but like meeting you and meeting like, you know, Alex and the rest of the women who are part of the group, like it's part of the program as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, we love supporting you. Like I said earlier, Sally for president is real. Like across Hoop York City, across Buckets and Brunch, wherever we are, if someone's bringing up your name, we're like, yes, she is that girl, and we love her. Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned some of the upcoming things you all have for PeacePlayers globally.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? It's called the Friendship Games?
Yeah, the
Correct.
Friendship Games. I think the Friendship Games is such a brilliant initiative. And for us, it's one of our flagship moments. It's really the spirit of what PeacePlayers represents, right? It's this global movement of young people, young leaders who are united by their shared passion for sports. So, you know, PeacePlayers works in South Africa, in Northern Ireland, in Israel, in the West Bank. You know, in Israel, we're the only integrated basketball club where Palestinians and Israeli kids are playing on mixed teams.
Oh, wow.
And competing together,
That's
right?
a big deal.
Yeah, even right now. And so, you know, the Friendship Games is it's a week-long leadership through sports experience and camp that brings together our standout leaders from all of those international sites, including the U.S. And so we'll be hosting the Friendship Games in Detroit this summer.
That is awesome.
So it's in Detroit this summer. We're doing it in partnership with the Pistons. We have a number of partners who are behind us, including the Detroit Sports Commission, the Davidson Foundation, a number of other partners. And so we're really excited. We're going to have at least about 80 young people from all of our sites in the U.S. in Detroit for a full week. They'll be taking part in everything from like the clinics, the tournaments, but more importantly, it's the leadership seminars and the workshops. It's really focused on peace building and what it looks like in each of their unique contexts. And again, equipping them with that, the mindset, the support, and the tools to, you know, go back home and continue to be change makers and using sports to make a difference. This is our second year hosting it. The first year was actually in Israel in 2022.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
And so we had a group of about 20 U.S. kids were in Israel for a full week. The whole cultural immersion and experience, I think African-American, Latinx youth, you know, being in the middle of Jerusalem and that whole experience, what it meant for them was just so special.
Yeah, such an eye-opener.
Yeah. So there's the cultural piece, there's the leadership development piece, and of course, like basketball is such a cultural force, and provides a unique way to do, you know, meaningful work in that way. So we're really excited to make it happen. It's July. We kick off July 27th in Detroit, and we'll have the group together till August 2nd.
Wow,
so it's going to be a long, exciting week.
Yeah. Is there any way for people to like tap into what's going on who may not know?
Yeah. So our social media, we're going to be promoting over the next 2 months. If you would love to attend or get behind it or sponsor or just invest in it, like you can reach out to me. We can drop my email in the interview or in the link somewhere in the interview, but you can reach out directly to me. But yeah, if you would love to attend, if you're based in Detroit and would love to see it, like again, reach out to me and we'll get you the invitation to have you come out and experience it. It's going to be amazing. The Pistons will be a huge part of it. We're expecting a couple Pistons players will be part of it as well. Awesome. So it's going to be brilliant. We're excited.
No, that's really cool. I know that city's going to be on fire for that whole event. So I love that. That's super powerful. Last question specifically on PeacePlayers. What is a powerful story or moment from your work with PeacePlayers that has stayed with you?
Ooh, okay, I gotta think for two seconds.
No, you're good. Take your time.
There's been a few, but I think I would say, you know, the work in Brooklyn was very special to me. We built that program from the ground up, and you know, PeacePlayers Brooklyn works in Brownsville, East New York. And also we just added Crown Heights is one of our neighborhoods as well. So we're very neighborhood based. And, you know, during my time building the Brooklyn program, you know, I talked a bit about the girls. That was when I really realized, you know, some of the deep structural inequities in the U.S. and how it manifests in different ways. And just the importance of someone believing in you and the difference that can make. Yeah. So I'll share one story. I have one of our young, he's an alumni now, and when we started building the program in Brooklyn, we started with our boys leadership development program, which is a high school program. It's built as a sport. It's a basketball team, but there are no tryouts to join. The understanding is that kids are committed to the pillars of the program, which is, obviously the basketball, but personal development, mentorship, giving back, service, all of that good stuff. And I remember, as a woman coaching a group of boys, I was doing everything from writing the grants to building the strategy to coaching the kids. It can be daunting, right? And I always kind of questioned myself if they really trusted me as their coach. And we had a session once, and I had reached out to one of our partners to lead a session with the guys. It was really focused on young men and the challenges that young men face. So he was facilitating the session. I was more so on the side, just kind of listening in. And he asked the question of who do they really look up to? And they're all going around, everyone's talking about their brother, their mom, and one of our kids said, Coach Sally. And I was I was still taken aback. I was like, oh, why? And, he was like, it could be really challenging leading a group of men. And she has shown us, what female leadership can look like. And I'm so confident in her as our coach. And trust her as our coach. And mind you, this how high school kids can be. You say hi to them, they just give you a head nod.
Sometimes they care, sometimes they don't.
You just don't really know. Yeah. And when he said that, to be honest, that was one of the moments where you guys talk about Sally for president, but you have moments in time where there's something that happens that just really sparks.
Yeah.
And
it's wow, they were really paying attention to everything I've been doing. Yeah.
That for me was he saw. I was there to be their coach and their whatever. There's a hierarchy, right, and guide them. But in that moment, that poured into me in a way that I needed at the time. And it really became a confidence booster. And it's been key to a lot of what I've done since then, really.
That's amazing. That's so cool that we have those moments where you think that someone isn't paying attention or someone isn't looking, but then to hear feedback like that really does, like you said, pushes you and motivates you to keep going and knowing that you're headed down the right direction. So that's awesome. I love that you were able to hear that, because a lot of times they won't say that in front of the people that they actually do admire or look up to. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and to hear that from, because sometimes people feel like they need that kind of a affirmation from your boss or what have you. But I think in that moment, hearing that from him was certainly way more valuable to me than hearing it from anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's been the spark for a lot of what we've gone on to do. And that group of alums, many of them are in college now. He's actually, and he moved to Columbus, Ohio. He's working with JP Morgan.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Very brilliant kid. And so when we, at the start of the interview, I talked about using sports to find different pathways. And for me, that's really what it is. I started playing basketball as it was fun. We thought it was really cool, right? But I've seen how, sometimes young people think I'm only going to pursue my sport to go play professionally. But, sports can really be a platform that can catapult you to different things that you didn't even realize those possibilities were there. So, him, Rayshawn is his name, and along with other of our alumni, many of them have gone on to do other things and know that PeacePlayers is still this, program, this crew that we're part of, and is always going to be there and be part of their support network.
I love that. That's amazing. I want to get into, a lot of the other things you have going on outside of just, PeacePlayers. Let's talk about Heritage, capital HER though.
Yeah.
Specifically for women. So you co-founded the Heritage Collective to support girls and women. What inspired that, and how does it tie into your leadership journey?
Yeah, so the Heritage Collective is focused primarily on women. And we've found that a lot of women, and women on the continent and in the diaspora, right? It's very much Pan-African focused. Africa is full of talent and potential. And a lot of that potential goes unrealized. And a lot of it has to do with being under-networked. Yeah. Or not being proximate to the right spaces, the right hubs.
That awareness,
And so, me and it's really my tribe of friends we took what we've been doing for ourselves, and we're thinking about how do we extend it to more people.
Love that.
And it's really focused on bridging the gap, closing the gap between access and ambition for talented and ambitious African women on the continent and in the diaspora. And so the collective is focused on hosting experiences that create kind of like that informal, intimate space that invites collaboration and networks to form, partnerships to form. And we look to bring together women and their male champions at different points in their journeys. We're not just focused on the emerging leader. We're also thinking about the established leader who also is thinking about her network as well.
Yeah.
How do we create those, catalytic moments to happen? And it's kind of getting the right people in the right room and curating the experiences to help drive, partnerships and visibility. And so that is what the Heritage Collective is. It's a group of friends who have taken what's worked really well for us and thinking about how do we extend it to more people.
Amazing. I love that. In creating, Heritage, were you guys ever, I think one thing that in this industry that a lot of us run into sometimes as women is like that gender equality. So how has that ever been, a part of why you guys created Heritage on top of, any like foundation or pillars that you all have for the collective?
Yeah. So certainly that's part of the reason, right? There's the being under networked, there are also like the structural issues. And when we look at the continent and growth opportunities, investment opportunities, women in Nigeria, for example, account for less than 10% of investments in their startups or their businesses.
Oh, wow.
And so, how do we close that gap? Sometimes it just has to do with the relationship. Who do you know? Most times that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And if we can create an environment where more talented, smart, and ambitious people can be in the right room with someone with the network and the capital to get them the resource they need to launch their business that can drive employment, drive economic growth, like that's what we're trying to get to. Certainly the structural issues are a part of the drive and force and why we created the collective. We really want to think about ourselves from, like, we don't want to frame it too much from, we're community and to socially focused. We want to think about the economic side of things. If we don't have enough women who are participating in African economies, that's a missed market opportunity. That's missed growth opportunities. Like, from an economic growth standpoint, from a nation building standpoint, imagine in the US, half of our population are just not maximizing their economic potential. Like, that takes away from the growth trajectory, the employment opportunities. And so that's really how we're framing it is, Africa is at an inflection point. You look at what's happening around us between, US aid cuts, between just a change in narrative around, how aid, the perception of aid. A lot of Africans are more empowered and feeling more empowered and wanting to take full ownership of the economic development in our countries. And women have to be in the front seat, in the front row of that.
Yeah.
And so we want to be part of the response to that by building a collective and building the platform and building a talent pipeline, investable talent pipeline that deserve and should get the resources in the back end to launch their businesses, to launch their initiatives, to really help catalyze and help grow the economies in these countries. So that's how we're focusing our approach. Certainly it's a social issue, but it's even more importantly, it's an economic issue.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's amazing. How can, women globally in the African diaspora learn more about heritage? And also how can, investors who understand what you're looking for in this market and pushing, the economy forward, how can they find out more and be a part of this?
So what we're doing at the moment is really looking at major global convenings and hosting our events on the sidelines, or as we like to say, on the front lines of those events, right? So we launched in Côte d'Ivoire. We hosted our first event in Côte d'Ivoire last week on the sidelines of the Africa CEO Forum. That event brings together all of the major CEOs of firms on the continent, presidents, like decision makers, pretty much. And so there are a number of those types of events coming up, and so we're looking to host events around those. So, for example, in New York in September, the UN General Assembly will be coming to New York, and so we're going to host an event on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Africa Business Heroes, which is Jack Ma's AliExpress founder, his initiative in Africa, that's taking place in Kigali, Rwanda in December. So we're going to be hosting an event in Kigali then. So what we're looking to do right now is really drum up attention and build visibility around it, while we begin to think about like, well, what does kind of programming look like? Because there's a lot of really brilliant and accomplished women who are part of the collective. How do we make their expertise more accessible to the women who are going to be part of the group?
Offer that education that they have. No, that's amazing. I love that you guys are doing stuff globally too. Like you're not just trying to focus on one area, and bringing all the world leaders into one space. That's really amazing. A lot of people aren't able to do that. So the fact that you the collective of women that you started this with are able to do that, that's such a beautiful thing. And so I say keep pushing that forward, because it will create change. I mean, you're already creating change, but it'll create more.
I also want to add that the pillars of the collective. The first is really access and exposure, right? Getting women in the right rooms, getting them the right exposure to, again, confidence is a muscle. And it's a muscle that grows from exposure. And so, part of, women feeling empowered in leadership roles and in building really smart businesses is that feeling of empowerment. And we know that access and exposure drives that. The second is visibility and voice. If no one knows who you are, then the likelihood of you getting funding and getting opportunity are limited, right? So how do we elevate narratives and stories of women who are doing really brilliant work, on the continent and driving the continent? And then the last is, collective growth, right? How do we take all of the expertise and networks that we all bring to help accelerate the work that everyone's doing? So those are the three major pillars. And my co-founders are, Habiba Waziri, who's the MD of BGR Africa, which is a consulting company that's focused on, solving human capital development problems for firms, multinationals, and companies and governments on the continent.
Amazing.
The second is Fatima Solomon. She is the CEO of a company called Mr. Roof. She's a pioneer in the real estate and construction industry in Rwanda. And then lastly is Huguette Umutoni. And Huguette is, she's Rwandan, based in Ghana. And she is a brilliant storyteller, just visual storyteller and just a force. And so we're really excited about the different expertise and skill sets that we have in the group. Everyone, we're sector agnostic, right? So there's sports, there's media, there's, business. And so we feel really confident in that the expertise in the space and how we can leverage that to, open up more opportunities for more women.
That is awesome. No, good luck on your next, event. You said that's in December.
So next one is in September in New York.
Okay. Nice. Amazing. Good luck on that. That's going to be very impactful.
Thank you.
I already know it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's speak a little bit more about the global platforms that you have been in. You've spoken at the U.S. Capitol in major summits. When you're in those rooms, what message do you want most policymakers to hear about young people in sports?
Young people's voices are not always in the rooms when decisions are being made that will affect their lives. And so that is part of the crux of our message, is that we need more young leaders and more pathways to leadership for young people, to be able to inform policies that will affect their lives, their futures, right? And so that is one of the key messages that we try to push, that I try to push when we're in those spaces. The second is around education and empowerment, right? When young people have the right education and empowerment opportunities, I honestly believe that, that is so foundational. Skills can be learned, right? Like whatever, public speaking, communicate, those things can be learned, but it starts here first, right? If your mindset, if you believe in yourself and believe that your opinion matters, that is already like half the game, half the battle is won.
That's that first step.
That's the first step. And so what we try to push is that piece. And sports is such an organic way to do it, right? There's so much that you learn as an athlete that you don't even realize that you're learning. I still remember, as a kid, just going to the basketball court and saying, I got next.
Yeah.
And then when I think about it now as an adult, I'm like, where did that confidence come from? Because it can be so daunting, right? Such a male-dominated space that sport is. And so that's part of the reason why I'm such a firm believer in sport as a launch pad, especially for women. A lot of leadership skills that we celebrate in men, a lot of those skills were gained because boys were exposed to sports growing up. Leading your team, leading vocally or leading from behind, teamwork,
learning different types of people,
right? Competing, learning team dynamics, like. Boys are encouraged to play sports, whereas girls are kind of like, it's frowned upon. If you're going to play, like, don't go too hard, like it's like girls experience
still
the
be
sports.
Ladylike, yeah.
Meanwhile, when you're in the workplace, those are the, skill sets and the traits that will get you ahead. Those are the skills and traits that will get you, put you in a position of influence. And so the more we can get young people, young girls especially, to have that exposure, we are already accelerating, helping close, the gap around female representation in leadership. So those are just kind of the key messages I try to push is, that education, empowerment, the mindset piece, and also, sports as an opportunity to really accelerate, leaders into the right rooms.
Yeah, for sure. How do you amplify young voices in policy and leadership conversations, especially from communities that are often left out? You've spoken a lot on that.
Yeah. It's, again, I go back to, I do a lot of speaking, right? And for me, like, I want to get more young people in that space and feeling like their voice is important. That's why things like the Girls Summit, media training is a huge part of that. When you've mastered the skill of being able to communicate your ideas, that is really, really critical. And you combine that with confidence and clarity of thought and clarity of your message, you'd be surprised in how much you can get done. And so, I think that is a foundational skill set for young people to learn is their voice. And you don't want to just go say, hey, let's go work on public speaking. Listen, when I first started speaking, I was very terrified of speaking publicly.
Same,
right?
Same.
Like,
I still am now sometimes.
Yeah, like my 15-year-old self would be like, what in the world are you doing? Right. But the mindset shift and the belief, developing that self-belief and that you are, like, your presence in the room is important. It's not just important, it's critical, right? For this thing that you care about to move forward. And so that's really, with our young people, what we push from our curriculum. It's really about, like, our core values that's centered on, like, inside out transformation. Like, the change I want to see has to start with me, right? Seeing people as people, which is seeing the humanity in other people, culture of collaboration. Like, these are the values that are really, embedded in PeacePlayers programming. And so, when we talk about, like, youth advocacy, like, for me, it's a mindset thing. It's like a becoming, like who you're becoming. And it's a process that you go through. Yeah. And as you go through that process, isn't it even more rewarding to have a coach that believes in you and teammates that are supportive of you right alongside with you?
Yeah. And
experiences that just continue to open and unearth new possibilities for yourself. And the more we do that, the more, young people feel that sense of confidence and sense of calling to, use their voice for something, bigger than themselves.
Yeah. I feel like that confidence also comes in repetition, just like on the court, like building your skills. It's having practice every day, doing drills every day, things like that. So I love that you guys are really focused on, or you just personally in your journey for your career and what you do, just focus on making sure that, kids, women, girls, whoever may be a part of what's going on, they're getting that repetition in. I think a lot of people, they try to come do it once and they're like, oh, okay, we did it. That's fine. But with you and the things that you have going on, you are very, you repeat it. You are everywhere. You're doing different summits for different, different collectives, for PeacePlayers, for heritage, for, all the things that you're just pushing forward. And so I love that repetition is really part of something that you're really trying to do for the youth and for sport.
Yeah.
I want to talk about social impact and partnerships. So this may touch a little bit of Peace Players, but this also may touch some of the other things you have going on. So you've led, successful partnerships with Peace Players and beyond. What makes a partnership truly impactful in your view?
Partnership is really centered on two groups of people, two people who have, mutual objectives, right? You have things you're trying to accomplish together. And for me, it's about uncovering what are you trying to do? Here's what I'm trying to do. What are you trying to do? And how do we bring value? And, how do I bring value and how can you add value to something, to what we're working on? So that's really important. I've seen people who lead with kind of very transactional, partnerships, and it's like, those are so short. You get short-term returns. Yeah. Whereas when you think big and you think about what you're trying to accomplish and how you can help other people.
Yeah.
That's really how I approach my work is how can I be helpful? It's never with the perspective of I'm trying to do this and it's it's just me in my zone and so, foundational to a strong partnership is really identifying here's where we're trying to go. Who would be helpful to have with us on that journey? And so you think about the Girls Summit, for example, I really wanted the Hoop York and the Buckets crowd to be part of the one in New York because we're here, right?
No, yeah, we came out, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm it'd be great to have them in the house. So drop it in the chat. Hey, hey team, come out, come be part of this. Because I knew how much energy you all would bring and how that will even add to the girls' experience. You think about, for example, Nike's another one of our partners, right? Nike in 2016, 2017 wanted to really establish their brand in the social justice conversation, right? Recognizing that they're a brand that many of the communities that are affected by, what we were seeing in 2016 and even now today, are people who, the communities are people who are wearing Nikes, right? And then Peace Players has been successful in working in places like South Africa and Israel. They have something that can be it can complement where we want to go. Yeah. And so that's how that partnership came alive. And then you think about, how do we measure our success? We know we have these similar objectives. Here are the metrics of how we're going to measure it. Here's how much we're going to invest. Here's what we'll bring. And so, there's the resource and the investment side of it. There's also the kind of you said, social impact, right? What is the greater value that this partnership is going to bring to life? And that for me is so critical in anything I'm involved with is how do we add that, that community and that social element to make sure that, we're not just thinking about the brand and how we're going to make profits, but also how do we make a difference?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think something that I'm learning recently and being part of, the JDS sports team and, our Play with Purpose Fund is understanding, these partnerships, we want to have longevity. Like you said, we don't want that quick return. And so just understanding people's intention behind partnerships and where they're coming from. And like you said, knowing not what their immediate goal is. Yes, we want to help with that, but also what are your long-term goals and understanding those things. So that's a great point of view on partnerships for sure. I'm going to read this because I want to get it right.
It's all good.
DPD Africa, you're on the board of this African startup, right? Can you share more about the specific types of healthcare development projects DPD Africa supports and how the platform identifies and connects local talent to these initiatives?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long question. So feel free to tell us more about DPD Africa first and then kind of what you guys have going on.
Yeah. So you'll find that talent and human potential is one of the consistent themes in most things I'm involved with.
Yeah.
So DPD Africa is a platform that's focused on creating opportunities for local talent. So you'll find, for example, in Nigeria, for example, you have people who are expert data analysts, expert, in community development in a specific village, or an expert in what have you. What comes to mind? Sonogram, or a doctor or a nurse who's a specialist in a certain area. And there's a lot of development projects. And what I mean by that is for example, USAID or the German equivalent of USAID might say, okay, we want to fund a project that's focused on reducing rates of malaria in this village in southern Nigeria. And what normally happens is they will send experts from Europe or other parts of the world who don't know anything about that village. And so what we want to do is to create a platform where local talent who have local intimate knowledge of their surrounding communities, who also have expertise, to be the ones who are sourced to work on these projects.
Okay.
We're also looking to solve the kind of healthcare, the gaps in the healthcare system in Nigeria. Like health insurance is still not really, it hasn't really been built out properly in Nigeria. And so like things like those types of gaps, like things that we take for granted here, a lot of those things are still being established in countries like Nigeria, for example. So that's what it is, the platform connecting talent with global opportunities that are servicing their own local communities. That way you have that intimate knowledge and understanding of, you have an expert who's not only bringing the technical expertise, but they also have the local expertise that will be key in the success of that project. So I'm part of the board, really focused around like visibility for the founder. The founder is a good friend. Helping him elevate his profile, and helping them elevate the brand to attract the right funding to really get it off the ground.
Amazing. No. What advice would you have for someone who's trying to, get funding, get investments outside of just, like networking is one thing. And then when you get in that door, like what advice could you offer someone who, once they're in that door, they know what to say, how to say it, so that they, have a better opportunity of securing that investment?
Yeah. Ultimately, you're trying to solve a problem, right? Pursuing investment, you're looking to get resources to help you solve that problem. So what you're trying to do is find someone who's equally invested in solving that problem you've identified, right? And then framing it in a way that gets them excited and gives them ownership around the solution. Is it always successful, especially the fundraising landscape that we're in right now? It's a bit tricky, but it's really about inviting people to join you in a solution that you're working on. So that's one of my advice. Another is just visibility. Like you've got to be in the right places. We know this, right? Like people will support you if they feel like you're aligned with credible groups or credible organizations. So being in the right spaces, being part of the right platforms is so important in building that credibility that, you are one of you're on the forefront of solving that problem, and you should be the one who gets the resources to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're involved again in so many things, Sally, for president. What challenges have you experienced? I don't know if you have, but experienced in, making sure that everything that you're doing, these initiatives, these collectives, that you're trying to create, sustainable development, sustainable change. So what have you faced any challenges that have hindered you from reaching some of those goals, or and what did you do to kind of get over those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, you face challenges every day, right? Like it's part of the, I imagine you had a number of challenges you had to work through today, right? Like it's part.
As soon as I woke up, 17 emails, everything's on fire.
Yeah, you just get comfortable with being a problem solver. You get comfortable with being a problem solver. Like certainly, like I face challenges every day. I'm constantly working through like, balancing, different things, right? PeacePlayers is obviously like the core. For me, it's the core of my work. And then, I'm a board member. I'm a part of this collective. But, and in each of those spaces, there are challenges every day and failures too, right? Like, or what feels like failure at times. And it's really how you reframe it. It's like, what can I learn from this? What didn't we do well? And how do we get better? Like I like to call those of us who work in the change space where we're social entrepreneurs, because you're trying to address and solve a problem with a social, perspective. And the challenges are there every day. And sometimes you feel like you're not doing anything, you're not getting anywhere. But then you have moments where you look back and you see, okay, well, here's how far we've come. And, there's always room to keep getting better.
Amazing. No, I love that. No, like you said, like challenges come every day, and to have the knowledge and expertise to just fight through them and figure out those solutions is crucial. So that's definitely something, just even in my small moments of working with you, anything that has come across, like I just to see the way that you work is also, it helps me like figure out how to get over humps, get over challenges and figure out how to find those solutions. One thing I did want to talk to you about, because this was absolutely amazing. I remember we lost our minds in the Hoop York City in Buckets and Brunch community, but PeacePlayers received the Manny Jackson Human Spirit Award at the Basketball Hall of Fame. This was last year?
No, 2023.
2023. What was that like? Being in a room with obviously like some of our biggest idols when it came to the sport, but also being recognized for, you know, something that PeacePlayers and the initiatives that you all have been doing was such a big deal. And to have that recognized on such a big platform like that, what was that like?
I mean, it was such a deserving award. I think, you know, PeacePlayers, you know, it really started as an idea, right? It was founded by two brothers who were hoop heads just like us, you know, who you know, built friendships because of basketball with people from different backgrounds, and like really took that experience and wanted to extend it to more people, right? And for that award for PeacePlayers to be recognized on that platform, on that stage, I think was just so important to the credibility of the work, you know, being recognized like amongst, you know, Hall of Famers, and, you know, it was incredible. Like I was so proud of the organization and proud of everyone who's helped get it there. Because there are so many people, you know, I'm one of the more visible folks, you know, at PeacePlayers, but there's so many people behind the scenes who are so important for the work we do in places like, you know, Israel, you know, where it's an active conflict, right? South Africa, where the challenges are so real. You know, Northern Ireland, like there's so many really brilliant heroes behind PeacePlayers and what it is and the impact that it's had. So to be able to be on that stage and, you know, play our video and people get to hear about it and ask us about it, I think that was, you know, it was humbling, but it was also just like really affirming that, you know, the organization has come a long way, and like, and everyone who's put work towards it, like that was, you know, that was really like a way of a head nod of like, you know, great work. Great work.
No, that was so cool to see. I remember we all watched that like a few times. We were like, this is amazing. Sally's doing it, y'all. Do you think that, you know, recognition and awards given to, you know, foundations like, or, you know, organizations like PeacePlayer, that is, you know, is that really going to help push, you know, the sport forward, push those initiatives forward, receiving awards like that?
Yeah, I mean, it gives, you know, it draws eyes, right? Like draws in eyes. Like, I remember, you know, I was speaking and I looked up and I like saw Steve Nash like staring dead at me, and I was like, oh. But it brings in like, you know, the visibility and the exposure, the like, like they're really doing this work. There's so many organizations that could have been called up on that stage, and we were the ones.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and being able to have that platform and, you know, have people, you know, reach out to us and follow up with us and want to get involved because of that moment, like that is, you know, it's so important for organizations like ours that are, you know, we're mainly, you know, we're nonprofit, we're fundraising. And so that type of visibility gives us the right, you know, credibility. It's the NBA, it's the biggest stage of basketball, right?
Like, for sure.
So it's so important for us, and we you know, we didn't take it for granted at all.
Amazing. Yeah. No, that was so cool to see. I was, again, Sally for president in that moment. That we all said it. So to close things out, I really want to talk about like your personal journey and your vision, right? You know, you have this incredible story of you coming from Nigeria to the US. You know, love the game of basketball, but then you really figured out a way to apply it to all aspects of your life, right? Which is, for me, I see you as a global leader, which is so inspiring. How has your personal journey shaped your leadership philosophy and how you want to, you know, make sure that you're not just staying in one bucket, that you're using your expertise, your knowledge, your, you know, your ability at the game and knowing the game to really put your hands in different places that will create change for so many different avenues, for so many different people?
Yeah. So I've always had, you know, I remember growing up, I had two interests. It was basketball and it was like history and like books. Like I really loved to read growing up. And I kept those two worlds completely separate. Like I had my basketball friends and then I had like my nerdy friends.
We all did. I had basketball friends. I had band friends. I was in band.
Right. So you had friends that kind of like, for me, it was like basketball, and like it was like my friends who were really into like books, history, and somewhere even like activists and all of that. So I think, and as you get older, you develop other interests, right? Like, sports is one, basketball specifically, and if I were to even go deeper within basketball, like, women's college basketball is like my favorite thing to watch right now. Like,
same.
So finding ways to take, when I realized I can kind of bring those two worlds together was, I mentioned when I learned about PeacePlayers. And so as I uncovered more interests and other things that I'm into, obviously, like talent, we keep talking about talent and like human capital, especially on the continent, like that's something I'm super, super passionate about and have been for a while. Attract an investment to the continent to help grow our economies and help, young people have as much possibilities in their lives. Like that is also another interest of mine. So that also informs, the spaces that I'm in, right? Because of that, there's the basketball, there's the, getting more girls in sports, there's the youth advocacy around that. And then there's the human potential. Like I spend time in Nigeria every year and I get to visit my village and I see so many kids, so many young people. And I always wonder like, what's their life outcome going to be? And will the environment play a role in that? And could we create the right environment for their best selves, their best possibilities to come alive? And that's part of what drives me. Like whether it's work we're doing here in the US at PeacePlayers or the Heritage Collective or anything else. It's like this human life, this young person
has so much potential.
Will all of it come to life? And how can we help make that happen? And so everything I'm involved with from, I'm a term member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a group that brings together emerging leaders who are working in foreign policy, be it in kind of the NGO space, business, law, what have you, to build their expertise around different topics affecting different parts of the world. If it's the French African Foundation, which again is a leadership group that convenes each year like 30 young leaders between 28 and 40, who can help strengthen relations between African countries and France and the European continent. So being in those rooms and being in those spaces helps kind of shape conversations. Like, I could shy away from those spaces, but if I know if I want to have influence, it's important that I'm in there.
Yeah.
And it's important that my voice is in there and someone who has a perspective like mine is in there.
Yeah.
And so that is so, foundational for me. Like at the heart of it is human talent and human potential and helping unearth that. And if it's sports, if it's investment, if it's, the heritage, like how do we help make that happen? That for me is the driving force.
Yeah.
And so that involves being in different spaces to help move that life work, a life mission forward.
Yeah. It's so interesting to understand like how to create true impact, you have to be essentially a jack of all trades, and understand like you say, your pillars and your foundations of what's pushing and motivating you. So to hear that you're someone who can juggle so many things, but still reach that common goal and know what your foundation is of why you're doing this every day, is really cool to see, to witness, to speak about, to hear about. And so, I thank you for being someone that I am able to know who does all of these amazing things. Because, I think so many people want to push for change and want to, hope for change, but to know you and see that you're one of those people who are actually doing it is so inspiring. And I wish the best for you and that all of the things that you're involved in are successful and that, that the kids back in your village that you see, they're fruitful from those things. So that's awesome.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, for sure. No,
thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited to see how it all comes together. Hopefully we sound good.
I think you sound great. You did great. Everything you spoke on, I was like taking mental notes, like Sally for president. Got to write this down.
No, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll definitely have to have you back for sure for another conversation, hear more about what else you've done.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.